Look, every college junior that I know is grinding lead for 3 to 4 hours a day for the past 4 to 6 months, and they don't have an internship or a job. Now, I work remotely for a Japanese AI company called Akatsuki AI Japan, and I have did my GSOC from Python Software Foundation, and I was also an open source mentor intern at Newton School of Technology, and I was also at Super 30 which is by Harkirat Singh. And all of this without grinding lead code for 5 to 6 hours a day for 6 to 7 months. So let's get into the video. Now every junior that I talk to tells me the same thing, that they have been grinding lead code for the past 7 to 8 months and they are not getting any results. So the thing is, you open lead code, you solve 10 to 15 easy problems, and then you feel like a genius, right? And then you start solving medium questions, and then you drop off, right? And you start repeating this for the 8 months. You go back to arrays, and this go for 7 to 8 months, and your GitHub is empty. You have half solved 50 or so problems, right? So the thing is that DSA is not useless. DSA can actually help you crack the interview, but it won't help you into getting one, right? A lot of people solve 1,000, 2,000 problems and solve questions, a lot of questions on Code Forces, Code Chef, right? But that number that you hit, which is 1,000 and 1,500 or 2,000 problems, is not going to get you into an interview, right? Because in a real world scenario, they look at your overall profile. They look at your projects, your open source contributions, your community management, how active you are on LinkedIn and personal profiles. So this is the DSA trap that you guys need to get out of, and we are going to talk in this video. Now, what actually gets you hired? So there are basically three things. One is your public profile, the second is your projects, and the third is your network. If you have an updated public profile, let's say you are active on LinkedIn, Twitter, and you are actively contributing to open source or making good projects on GitHub, so you have active GitHub profile as well. So those are the things that actually matters, and they can get you into an interview, right? They won't actually help you crack the interview, but that would get you into an interview. Now, after that comes many things like system design, lead code, and other problem solving skills that you actually develop while solving complex problems, or let's say building huge projects. Now, I'm not saying that lead code is completely worse or a waste of time, but you need to have a balance. There are a lot of people who actually solve 1,000 and 2,000 problems. That's utterly useless. So and the second thing is your projects. If you have a complex project, you have shown your skills, right? Let's say you have created a Paytm clone. Now, I'm not saying just a front end, right? I'm saying you have a proper back end and you have written all the payment system from scratch, and you can explain it from the first principles to the interviewer or the founder or the CEO, right? So the thing is, if you actually know stuff, if you can build backend by yourself without using AI, that actually matters to get you an interview and crack an interview, right? Not just DSA problems. If you just do DSA, it is just looking at one side of whole software engineering, because there are 1,000 different things that you have to do if you want to get into an interview and crack it. And the third thing is network. If you have a strong network, you can actually get, let's say you can get a referral, or let's say you can run into an opportunity that you have been avoiding for a while, let's say by just solving late code problems while sitting in your room, right? You need to be out there. You need to actually participate in various things and show yourself that yes, you are capable of doing these things, and after that you can get an interview and actually crack it. And you can easily crack the interview if you have contributed enough to open source or made complex projects without using AI. So yeah, now I want to talk about my experience with Super 30. And so basically there were a lot of people who were solving problem from the very first principles. They were making huge complex projects, which were definitely given by Harkirat Bhaiya. And there what I saw was, even if you're using Cloud Code or Cursor or let's say any other AI, you need to make design decisions, right? You need to actually design architecture from scratch, and you need to think critically while drawing the architecture diagram on Excel. You need to think from the first principles, and you cannot develop that by solving 2,000 problems on lead code. A lot of people try to chase that mastery and just put that tag on their on their LinkedIn that I have solved 2,000 problems, and and they think that they can get into an interview, right? That doesn't actually happens. What actually happens is that you are active on these platforms, let's say LinkedIn or Twitter, and you actually show them that you have built this complex architecture by yourself, right? You post that screenshot of that Excel drawer and the diagram that you have created of your project. So that actually helps you get into an interview. But even if I don't talk about getting into an interview, that's actually more good for your learning, right? If you are creating those architectures by yourself and you are writing your code by yourself, so you learn a lot of things that you cannot learn by just solving a lot of problems on LeetCode. So that's a small section that I want to talk about the super 30, because there were a lot of people who were not solving a lot of LeetCode problems, but they were solving enough just to build that intuitive mindset and that first principles thinking. So you need to build that first principles thinking by solving a limited amount of LeetCode problems. There has to be a perfect balance between both of them, which is solving that is web development and DSA. That is a long debate, and I would talk about in a different video. So yeah. Now at last, I want to say that chasing mastery is important. If you just chase mastery in one thing, that is wrong. Because in tech, things work differently. If you try to chase mastery in just DSA, it's not going to work. If you just chase mastery in, let's say, open source, it's not going to work, because there are a lot of open source contributors that are unemployed, and that, like, that's a whole different world, right? So the thing is, you need to have a balance. If you want to do DSA, you can do, but you need to have a let's say a specific number in mind. 500 is decent, 600 is decent, to develop the first principles thinking. Because when you start designing architectures by yourself, you actually learn a lot. Okay, if you actually think like, how do I create this architecture in a certain way, then you learn a lot. When you start thinking, how can I scale this project, you learn a lot. When you deploy the project, you learn a lot. So just by solving LeetCode problems, you are not going to get anywhere. If you are from a tier 3 college, I'm not talking about the IITs and IITs and other huge colleges who has really good placement. If you're from an IIT, you're probably not going to watch my video, because I also belong from a tier 3 college and I had almost zero connections or support or any of that. I'm from a very let's say lower middle class family, and I did things myself. So the thing is, just solving LeetCode problems is not the solution. You need to have a balance between both of these things, which is solving complex problems on LeetCode, Codeforces, a certain amount of problems, let's say 200 or 300, and secondly, designing architectures from scratch, building complex projects, and contributing to open source, right? If you just do these two things, you're going to get into an interview and crack it. All right. Now, additional thing that you can do is post more on LinkedIn, post more on Twitter, and make good friends, make connections, go to hackathons, attend events. There are a lot of things that you actually need to be doing if you want to get into these tech internships or jobs or whatever that you want to do. All right. That's it for this video. See you in the next one.